Andy Burnham has backtracked on his plans to renationalise Thames Water. The reason? Due to costs and legal reasons. Backbenchers have urged the Prime Minister to hold his nerve over proposals to put the debt-laden water company into a special administration regime, a type of nationalisation. However, officials have raised concerns about the cost of a possible administration to the taxpayer, as well as the prospect of legal challenges from rival bidders for Thames Water. The government is now working on whether there is a viable alternative for putting the utility into administration, with a decision unlikely for several months, according to the Times. The prospect of Mr. Burnham putting the group into administration is looking increasingly slim, according to the report. Backbench Labour MP John Trickett said, "Privatisation of water has been a disaster. It's a natural monopoly. Worse still, management has proved to be less than competent. Andy Burnham should hold his nerve and stick to his promise." Now, according to the Telegraph, they say that taking Thames Water into administration temporarily would cost £2 billion. However, the company is £20 billion in debt, so it could actually cost us nothing. Parliament is sovereign. We could pass an act that says the state could take over Thames Water for nothing. Why would anyone pay for a company that's billions in debt? However, there is a legal sticking point. Thames Water has many foreign investors, and because the UK has signed multiple investor-state dispute settlement clauses, the British state could be sued by a private company for loss of profits. ISDS has been part of trade deals for decades. One famous trade deal, TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership, contained an ISDS clause. This deal was heavily pushed by the EU, and leaving meant we were not subjected to it. However, we have signed many others, which is why we are at risk of paying a penalty for taking something that should be in public ownership. Amira, is this the first sign of the limitations of a Burnham government? I mean, a basic policy, the majority of people support it, but this government refuses to stand up to big business and corporations.
I mean, look, Burnham needs to prove that he's gutsy and that he will do what he thinks is right. He also needs to stick to his word, right? Not only is this move deeply unpopular with the wider public, it's unpopular with his own backbenchers. They're calling him out already. And it's really interesting because obviously before Burnham was essentially handed the keys to number 10, he was fairly loud on the topic of water and public ownership, right? So backpedaling on this would be genuinely damning for his tenure. And we know what continual U-turns did for the Labour Party's previous leader and the end of his term. But I found this particular story quite frustrating to watch because, you know, Burnham's supposed to be different. He's sort of swooped in like some sort of messiah for the Labour Party, saying all of the right things. You know, he's emulated this sort of Mamdani-esque social media, announcing big changes, smooth transitions, quite fun to watch. But he seems to have fallen short on the thing that matters most when the vast majority of people have this really high distrust in politics, right? And that's keeping your promises, or at least having a really good reason for why you haven't. And the problem he's got here is this is not a good reason. Matter of fact, this is what the conversation has always been about, whether you can stand up to big corporations, whether you are going to serve and choose working people. And like, we all know the facts, right? We all know that no other country in the world essentially runs water like we do, that the model of privatization is a failure. You know, that there was an assumption decades ago that privatizing water would result in further investment, and we've all lived to see that completely not be true. We all want this to end. Let's just stop wasting time, right? There are massive profits being paid out to shareholders while we see water shortages in some areas, sewage dumped in our rivers. Like, it's not on. And Burnham doesn't really have a choice on this topic. I think a lot of this is actually backbenchers piling on the pressure to make sure that he doesn't backpedal, and he still has time. But actually, a lot of Burnham's mandate is actually on these promises that he made in the weeks before taking over and standing not in front of a podium as he announced his first day as Prime Minister. And so he doesn't have a choice. He is going to have to stand up to corporations. And if he doesn't, it really could be damning for the Labour Party, who's finally going back up in the polls.
Yeah, it's a good point. This is probably and actually, do you know what? Burnham says himself, this is the last chance to save the Labour Party. I think people become extremely angry, not just over the Blair years, but recently with Keir Starmer. Wins a stonky majority of a low vote share. A lot of people are angry, falling in the polls. And Burnham said himself, look, I'm probably the last person to do something about this party.
Yeah.
And that requires standing up and making bold policies. And him, shelving this policy, something that people want, it's not even a left-wing policy, is proving that exactly. And I think that this is going to be highly damaging to Labour. And you're right, he announced his policies just before he stood in Makerfield. They're not manifesto policies or promises, but who cares? Honestly, people don't care whether it's in a manifesto or not. That's for the pundit class. People in the pundit class say, well, it's not in the manifesto, so no one gives a shit. People have election fatigue. People just want solutions. People just want the government getting on with the job. And he's not going to lose support if he were to implement really good policies such as nationalisation.
Yeah.
He's not going to lose support, is he?
There is... It's such a win-win as a policy as well, right? Because it's not a touchy subject, right?
No.
Like, there is so much consensus among the wider public that they'd like for their water to not be privately owned, and they'd like for shareholders to not take up massive amounts. There's consensus literally within his own party about it. And the thing that really strikes me is this is his probably one of the sort of flagship promises to prove that he's not in the pocket of big corporations. Like this is one of the ones where Burnham's got a chance to go, hey, look, I'm different. I am the last chance, and I'm different, and I'm delivering, and believe in the Labour Party, right? And the thing about it is, he's got a convincing brand. I think we all want Burnham to do well. None of us, no one wants to watch him fail who cares about progressive politics or who cares about people, right? And I'm sure that, the lot in the Green Party are watching this and cringing. They're not going to be celebrating about this, right? As much as it means that the people that have jumped ship from the Greens to the Labour might shift back, at the end of the day, it's bad for people, right? And so Burnham, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And from what I've seen, he's yet to properly comment. But the pressure will pile on over the next few days. And he will have to do something about it because, to summarize, Burnham may be in trouble if he goes down this pathway, right? You go through what we've witnessed, right? So he's come in, he's had really brilliant start, essentially. Announced all these policies, people love it, £2 bus fare, woo, let's go, right? He gets this massive Burnham bounce. A lot of people start really believing him. He has some moments, his deafening silence on climate change and proposals around Rosebank and Jackdaw, not great, right? Then would come backpedaling on water nationalisation. Then would come backpedaling on bringing, further basic services into public ownership. Then if he can't deliver on some of his flagship promises, whether it's tackling youth unemployment / just young people's futures in general, tackling homelessness, because he's talking so much about doing that, building record levels of social housing, establishing a national care service. If he can't begin to make leeway on those, as well as then backpedaling on some of the other key things that he's promised beforehand, what we suddenly see is that what looked like, in some ways, sunshine and rainbows for the 2029 election for the Labour Party may not be as smooth sailing as it first looked when he stood outside of number 10. And I don't think that's controversial. I think that's actually quite standard. I think that's what we all know to be true. And I think it's what Burnham and his administration and his team know to be true as well. And so I would actually genuinely be surprised if Burnham doesn't work really hard to fix his image around this particular topic, because he knows how big of a deal this will be to the number of people that back him, but also then in terms of the pressure on him to call an election and what that does for the Labour Party and whether they're ready yet, whether this is the moment or not the moment, etc., etc. What you don't want is for Burnham to be suddenly inundated in this conversation of, are you going to U-turn like Starmer did, and are we going to suddenly be in a situation where we're having another leadership contest for the Labour Party before we've even reached the 2029 election?
And I think this kind of politics serves Reform and Nigel Farage. It's not just the policies people are angry at with the political establishment. I think this idea of politicians being inept. So Burnham says, we want water nationalisation. Oh, but I don't know if we can. And people are sick and tired of that, obviously both on the left and right, but I think it serves the right more because someone like Nigel Farage, who you can, go up to people in the street and say, this guy's corrupt, this guy's taking money off of billionaires, this guy has so many different jobs. And the response isn't to say, oh my God, really? A lot of the times they say, yeah, we know, but we don't care because all other politicians are bad. But we just think that Farage is going to come in and change the system or come in and actually do something. And I think it's that inaction that we've seen from successive politicians that people just want someone to do something, even if it's for the bad. And that is so damaging. It doesn't work quite as well on the left because I'd argue, and I'm sure you would agree, the left are... the left have more policies, actual policies, right? The policies matter to us. I'm not saying Reform don't have policies, and we just discussed one of their really bad ones at the top of the show. But the right wing have, I think, less policies and more of a vibes-based political agenda. But they absolutely rely on the whole strongman thing and, Farage getting in and changing things. And if they see Andy Burnham, being like Starmer, U-turning, if they see him, backing down and showing weakness, then I think that just further emboldens someone like Farage.
I mean, yeah, people don't trust politicians, but I also think there is something about, like, how does a politician make you feel, right? And I think it matters, right? The reality seems to be that Farage makes people feel powerful, right? He makes people feel like he's going to do stuff, he's going to deliver, he's going to push back, stuff's going to happen, right? And I think what we're still in lots of progressive and left-wing spaces is that we want the delivery, but actually, like, what do we want our leaders to make us feel like? Because if we don't know what that is, the left will never be sexy. It will never be a sexy place to be. Like, I think we do want people like Burnham to be both relatable but also capable. And so what we need is the element of, we believe they're capable, right? We believe they're trustworthy. We see them as sort of like, I don't know, paternal figures that get shit done, right? Like that like there's got to be something. There's got to be an understanding of what we're trying to do, right? Are they our superheroes? Like, what happens here? Because I actually think what we've got now is, if it's only about policies and it's not about how someone makes people feel, then there is no longevity, there is no trust, there is no nuance, but also there's a massive gap in the access level for a lot of people in terms of being able to engage with left and progressive politics. Now, I actually think one of the things Burnham's doing a good job of is making people feel things, right? Like, he feels like the guy that lives next door, right? He's friendly northerner, he's doing his whole persona that's going for him, and that's clearly working, right? It's working to some degree, but what he won't be able to do is ride off of that, because his audience are incredibly discerning, and fundamentally it's not going to stop at how he makes us feel. It's going to end with how much he delivers and how life feels different for us. And I think if we can start measuring politicians in how has my life changed from when they got elected versus 2 years down the line, we might be in a better place, and it might be a more hopeful set of politics that we can engage people in. I don't think it's over for Burnham, but I do think that water nationalisation is going to be one of the biggest issues for him during his term, if he allows it to be, and he doesn't get on with getting it done.